Hello, hello my lovely dreamers. Welcome back to my channel. And if you are new here, welcome to you and you and you and you. I'm Christina, and this is Old School ASMR sounds. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime Sunday ASMR, and I have a special episode for you tonight. It is in fact the second episode of Amityville, the real story. I have uploaded the first episode last week. If you want to watch it, please check the link in the description box. It was about the crimes that had been committed in this very house, and today we are going to discuss the haunting part, the scary part of this story. The first part was dramatic and extremely sad. This part is rather scary and seems to be the script for a horror movie, and it is known all over the world that this was indeed the source of many horror books and horror stories. I am more than sure that most of you have already seen at least one of the Amityville horror series movie. Alright, so this beautiful house, which was located in 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. It is a Dutch colonial house, and it was built in the 1920s. As I have already told you in the first episode, in 1974, in this house, it is supposed that Ronald DeFeo, also known as Butch, had killed all his family. The crimes happened around 3 o'clock in the morning, and the strange thing about this is that nobody in the neighborhood had heard anything, only the family dog barking, and all the victims were found in their beds face down, and it is said that Butch told that some voices in his head told him to shot his family, and Many people consider that something evil helped him to commit those crimes. I think that, my opinion, I think that either Butch committed those horrifying crimes helped by someone, and they had previously spent some time in the basement abusing substances and stuff, or his sister indeed committed these crimes and he then accidentally killed her too, fighting over the rifle in her hand. My opinion. Now, this house nowadays has a different address because the actual owners want to keep it away from the tourists. After the horrifying crimes, the house was placed on market and it was bought by the Lutz family, but they succeeded to live in that house only for 28 days, and terrorized, horrified, they ran away from that house one night, leaving everything they had behind them. They have refused to tell what really happened that night when they decided to leave for good. But those who came into that house after they had left told that everything was indeed left behind, that they left the dishes from previous dinner in the sink, the clothes were hanging in the wardrobes. They actually left with the clothes on them, and they got into the car and ran away. They initially were planning to return and take their stuff or part of their stuff, but they experienced a strange thing in the hotel room, and they were so scared that they refused to go back and paid someone to get a few of their things, basic things, and that was it. The rest of their stuff was sold. George Lutz, the father of the family, sold somehow the story, and a book was written on this topic. And after the book was released, a series of films have been made, and it continues to be a topic of interest. After they left the house for good, the house was investigated by famous demonologists, and it was said that from a scale from 1 to 10, the house was had a 10 level haunting problem, to say so. People tried to find out why such things happened in that very house. It was said that it was built on an old cemetery, an Indian old cemetery, there was a witch house before. There a lot of fantastic stories, but the real house, the house was built in 1924 for John Moynihan, something like this, and his family. On the ruins of a previous house, which had been moved a little bit farther. It wasn't proof that there was a cemetery or something like this underneath the house. The house have had a lot of owners a long time. In 1965, the DeFeo family bought the house, and we already know the story. Around 3:15. It was the night of the 13th November 1974. Ronald DeFeo Butch killed his whole family. Then, on the 18th of December 1975, the Lutz family bought the house at a very good price. It was quite a bargain. The Lutz family was formed by the husband George, the wife, and they both had been previously married, and she had 3 children of her own. And as I have told you, they lived in that house only for 28 days. And they left horrified without taking anything with them. The famous paranormal investigators entered the house in order to solve the mystery, and they told after this in different interviews that it was one of the most haunted houses in the world, that there was indeed a very negative, very evil energy in there, and that a lot of people who entered that house to investigate died or had problems have heart problems, suffer heart attacks. Let's go back to the Lutz family and see what made them leave the house behind in such a hurry. Those who presented the house to the Lutz family were not very sincere at first. If you Google the name of the house, you can see photos of it, of the inside. It is indeed a gorgeous, gorgeous house. It has 5 bedrooms. It has a boat house, boat dock, pool, very large yard. It is a very, very beautiful house. And when they visited the house, the Lutz were of course was impressed. The price was very good. The realtor presented the house first in detail, and only after they had already been in love with the house, with the place itself, they decided to tell them that some horrifying murders were committed inside. But still, they still bought the house, and it is said that the Lutz moved in that house, buying also pieces of furniture that had previously belonged to the DeFeo family, and that they actually slept in the very beds where the killings were committed. Only the mattresses had been changed, but the beds, the frame beds were the same. They were also advised to have the house blessed by a priest. The Lutz were Christians, but she was Catholic and he was Methodist. And it was also said that he was a little bit into the occult. He was interested in paranormal and stuff like so. A little bit after moving into the house, Mrs. Lutz called a priest. Now, there are a lot of stories about this priest. Some of the sources say that the priest had never actually entered the house, just talked to the family on the phone. Other sources said that Padre Ralph Pecoraro, or whatever was his name, his real name was never made public, had indeed entered the house and blessed it. The famous couple of demonologists who investigated the house said that the father indeed had blessed the house, entered the house, and when he entered a certain room, he heard a male voice telling him to go away. And he was also slapped by an invisible entity. He was slapped on the face, and he developed then some blisters on his hands. The priest was terrified and advised the Lutz family not to enter that very room. After moving in the house, it was quite okay at first, but after a few days, the family members began experiencing very, very strange things. A lot of the first thing that they could feel very often was the feeling of a coldness. It was extremely cold in the house, and they needed to keep the fire on all the time. Some parts of the house smelled really bad. They could experience different visions. They saw a jelly green substance getting out from the walls. When they flushed the water in the toilet, the water became dark. George, the father, woke up every night at 3 and at 3:15, when it was said that the murders had been committed. Kathy, the mother, had nightmares all the time, and she dreamed Louise a few times. She dreamed the very moment she was killed, and she could say very precisely where the bullets entered Louise's body. The children began to argue, and they began to be very violent against each other. They heard steps all over the house. At midnight, the door of the house, the main door of the house, opened and closed by itself. Also, the various guests that visited the house experienced the same thing, very strange noises, steps in the rooms upstairs, although there was nobody there. Windows that opened and closed by themselves. One night Kathy was alone in the kitchen, and she felt that some kind of entity hugged her from behind. She also saw someone spying from the windows during the night. They all could see dark shadows moving around the house, and at a certain point they could notice that the little daughter Missy started to have an imaginary friend whose name was Jodie. One night George entered Missy's house and saw a pair of red eyes spying from outside the window. This is really scary. For 2 nights in a row, George woke up during the night and saw his wife levitating. He also heard musical instruments playing in the living room. He climbed down the living room and found out that all the furniture had been moved, as if someone was going to make space for a band to play or to dance. And probably the most terrifying things happened that very night, when they decided to go away, to run away without taking everything with them. They wanted to return and take some stuff, but while they were in their hotel room, they could notice that evil presence followed them, and they both woke up in the middle of the night and they were both levitating. So they decided not to go back there, and they didn't. George and Kathy Lutz have both passed away. One in 2004, I think, and the other one one in 2006. They initially didn't want to talk to anyone about what they had experienced, but they sold somehow the story, and a book was written. Well, many people say that in spite of the fact that the book became a bestseller, it was extremely successful, and a lot of American families identify themselves with the Lutz family. Apart from the haunting, of course, financial status and stuff. But many people still think that it was just a hoax, a thing created in order to get some money. But still, the Lutz family didn't get too much money out of this. I personally think that something might have happened in that house indeed. Maybe somehow George exaggerated everything in order to make his story more horrifying, to sell it better. But I don't think that two adults, two grown-up people will leave their dream house for nothing, out of the blue, only with the clothes they were wearing that night. I think something indeed happened in there, and people tried to find explanations to they both passed lie detector tests, so they weren't lying. Everything they had experienced in there, they really believed it was truth. They weren't lying. Some psychologists say that after having found out that those crimes had been committed in their house, they started imagining things, and everything they heard and experienced was just fruit of their imagination. They were the victims of their own fears. But still, the children experience the same things. You experience something for one night too, but I don't know. They continued to experience these kind of paranormal things for days and nights in a row. It happened on daily basis. It happened every night. They also said that they could see red eyes looking from outside of the window at night, and some of the neighbors said that it used to be a cat, a very fat cat in the neighborhood, that used to spy from the windows. But still, I don't know, a cat with red eyes. And they were also talking about an evil pig. Here I think that George really exaggerated a little bit. You can imagine that you see shadows and dark figures and stuff, maybe. But how about the temperature in the house, that it was extremely cold, went from warm to cold in a few seconds, and then it went back to warm and then back to cold. How about the things moved in the house? You can imagine figures, but you see with your own eyes when your furniture is moved in the house. when they said that they found a lot of flies in certain rooms. A lot of flies, although it was winter. They also found a secret red room in the basement, I think, and the family dog refused to go in there. When the house was investigated by a couple of famous demonologists and paranormal investigators, they entered that basement and they ordered that evil spirit to go away. And at that very point, the investigator felt the presence of a very, very, very evil entity in there. I'm talking about a very, very experienced investigator who was not very easily scared by stuff like this, but she was really panicked even before entering that house. She somehow felt before entering the house that inside there it was something really, really, really evil. Those two famous investigators who were husband and wife, and in whom I really believe, said that it was indeed a very evil presence in their very negative and evil energy. And as I have told you, they placed on a scale from 1 to 10, they placed it on a 10 for one of the most haunted houses in the world. Still, after the Lutz family left the house, the next owners have never told that they are experiencing paranormal activities of any kind. The Lutz family were the only one who seems to be those who experience that kind of things. Or maybe they were the only one who talked about this. After leaving the house, they divorced in 1980, and up to their death, they claimed that everything they had told, it was true. They told the truth. And in 1997, I think, one man who lived in the house tried to kill his wife. That is the only strange thing that has happened after the Lutz family left the house, but maybe it is the only thing that we came to know about. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Do you believe in paranormal? Do you believe in strange things? I really tend to believe that there is something more that this world that we live in, and there are many other possibilities. And maybe George Lutz, who was into paranormal stuff, maybe he just opened a portal, I don't know, or he was a little more predisposed to experiencing these kind of things. Missy, the little girl of the family, has always refused to talk about that experience. She was really affected, and Daniel, I think it was his name, it is still his name, has always told that this house has ruined his life, and that he continues to have nightmares. So there are people who say that this was definitely a hoax. Definitely a hoax. And there are others who really believe in this kind of stuff. I always tend to believe that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't think it was a hoax. I think that something strange really happened in there. Nobody lives there, the dream house, just like that, in the middle of the night. Nobody. But I think that George especially exaggerated a little bit more when he told the story, because he probably wanted the book to really have success. The book indeed had great success, and the house was investigated, but after they moved out from there, the other owners have never thought of anything. The house is quite different right now. The current owners removed those windows, and they also changed the address because they were invaded by tourists and curious people who wanted to go inside to visit. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. If you really liked this story, please drop a like. Or if you are new and you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. I am waiting for you on Tuesday for another episode of Tuesday's Wine and Crime with another old Italian story. And again on next Sunday for another episode of True Crime Sunday. Alright, thank you very much for